So I want to go ahead and say, since it's 9 o'clock, good morning to everyone. Thank you all for joining us. Welcome to the Marysville Tulalip Chamber of Commerce. This is our business before hours for November. Wanted to let you guys know that the chamber is open, and even though our VIC is not. So if you guys need information, we're still here and still bringing you important content via Zoom. I do recommend today that you put your view on speaker view, which is at the top right of your corner of your screen. I also wanted to let you guys know that mortgage and rent relief grants are still available. You can find links and information to these on the City of Marysville website, which is marysvillelaw.gov. If you have any questions throughout this presentation, please feel free to type it in the chat or raise your hand. And then I also want to let you know that we are recording this and we will be posting it on the Chamber's YouTube channel. A quick announcement for events that are still coming up. One is called Small Business Saturday. You guys may have heard of that. So I want to make sure you put that on your calendar for right after Black Friday to make a point to run into town and go support the small businesses on Main Street, a little off Main Street, but just making sure you hit those small businesses for your Christmas shopping. We have exciting news coming up about an online marketplace that's going to be paid for by the CARES grant, supportlocal.com. Please keep an eye out in the newsletter for this. This is going to be a no-cost option for small retailers that would like to get product online. Also, if there are any community announcements or events coming up, special sales, things as such, please feel free to post that in the chat. I'm going to ask that everyone here put in your name and contact information into the chat. And then what I'll do is at the end of our event, I will send out an email to all of you with basically the digital business card swap. So that way you guys can all have each other's contact information for follow-up. So next, I'd like to introduce our sponsor for today, Realty One Orca. First of all, I want to say they are an amazing community supporter, involved in many different nonprofits and always out there helping where they can. So I would very, very grateful to have Todd here to talk to us. So Todd, please feel free to take it away.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you, Jessica, and welcome chamber members, guests, and friends. My name is Todd Fallman. I'm the owner and designated broker for Realty One Group Orca, and I'm here to remind you, it's another great day in real estate. Yes, there's lots of reasons to be enthusiastic right now. I mean, finding a home is like finding toilet paper at Costco. It is incredibly difficult out there right now. Thanks, Nathan, for buyers. And the reason it's like this is we've had a string of 5 consecutive months back to back to back, July, August, September, and October. This is going to be our 5th month. The last 4 months, we have seen record-breaking reported pending sales and closed transactions in a 5-county region, which obviously includes Snohomish County, over the last 18 years. The highest number, 4 consecutive months over the last 18 years. The demand is hot, and the reason why is interest rates are below 3%. Now, just as Jessica politely said and rightly said, we are a community office. My office and the real estate brokers that represent us believe in a purpose and a philosophy of be you with us in family, community, and business. What that means is we put the individual first. Your needs, your desires, your wants for real estate. And that can be a condominium to a home or to our luxury outfit through our Realty One Group One Lux. We're able to handle and accommodate all of your residential resale desires and purposes. We have now over 26 brokers here at the firm, and we service the greater Marysville area from Bothell all the way up to Mount Vernon into Skagit County as well. We are now growing. Realty One Group Orca has now opened up an office in Oak Harbor. So we're into Island County as well. So if there is a need or a desire to work with a great local company that I can identify the prices for your homes in today's market, we'd appreciate, just go ahead and stop by our office. Now, things have changed a little bit due to the COVID restrictions that have just placed on us. Not much has changed, but a little bit has changed if you haven't already heard. We have been restricted from having open houses, but that doesn't stop a home from selling. What we are doing now, I can have up to a 25% capacity here in our office by appointment only. So we can still do person-to-person appointments in a home or in an office. We can still set appointments and show with all the safety, personal protection that is necessary for showings. So showings are still occurring. Buyer consultations, seller consultations, stagers, photographers, sign installers are still able to conduct and operate in the normal manner, which helps buyers and sellers in this market complete what it is they want. So if you have any questions and you want to work with really great professionals that are friendly, nice, and knowledgeable, go ahead and contact me today. Thank you, Jessica.
Thank you so much, Todd. Okay, so now we are going to go into the roundtable networking portion of our meeting, which means we're going to do a quick breakout room. So this is basically me putting you at a table and you get to do a 1-minute commercial about you and your company. I'll have notifications pop up while you're in your breakout room when it's the 1-minute time and it's time for the next person to speak. After the time's up, you'll be brought back into this main room here with us and we'll begin the presentation. So I'm going to go ahead and get that set up. So next up, we're going to have our main presentation with County Councilmember Nate Nehring. Nate Nehring is the chair of the Snohomish County Council. He's been a council member since 2017 and represents the communities of Arlington, Darrington, Granite Falls, Marysville, and Stanwood. Councilmember Nehring currently serves on over a dozen boards and committees throughout Snohomish County, including the Washington State Association of Counties Board of Directors, the Economic Alliance of Snohomish County Board of Directors, and the COVID-19 Economic and Workforce Recovery Task Force, which he co-chairs. Nate and his wife currently live in Arlington, where they're raising their 2 young children. Thank you, Nate, for being here today and for filling us in with what's going on currently at the county level.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much, Jessica, for that introduction. And thank you all very much for being here and for having me. It's obviously missed getting together on Fridays in person, but appreciate the chance to give an update virtually on what's going on in Snohomish County. And also thanks to the sponsor, Realty One Orca. I know Todd and his group do a great job in our community, so thanks for that. Just by way of a brief background, and I'll have a PowerPoint presentation that I'll run through today. But just a brief background, born and raised in Snohomish County. I currently represent, as Jessica mentioned, North County on the county council. And my wife and I currently live in Arlington. We've got 2 young kids. We've got a daughter named Kennedy, who just turned 2 a few weeks ago, and then a son named James, who's about 8.5 months old. And so we're having a lot of fun during the stay at home with the kids and getting to spend some more time, which has been a bright spot in what's otherwise been, I think, a very difficult situation for everybody. So anyway, I'll run through this presentation and update on Snohomish County and what's been happening in your county government. And then I'm happy to answer questions at the end, or if we're tight on time, I'll make sure that my email and phone number are in the chat box, so you can always reach out to me afterward or another day or whenever is convenient. So Jessica, do you have the PowerPoint that we could put up on the screen? Give that just a second. Okay, can everybody see that? Okay, perfect. So if we can go to the second slide. All right, thank you. So the first thing I wanted to talk about was the Snohomish County budget. As county council members, our 2 main functions are number 1, to pass laws or to change the county codes or enact new codes, but our second is to adopt the annual budget. In Snohomish County, we have an annual budget of just over $1 billion. And so there's quite a process to adopting that budget each year. It begins in the county executive's office, who starts in early spring with working with our departments and independently elected officials to meet with them and develop a recommended budget. And then in early September, the executive will deliver that proposed budget to the county council. And then from September to just prior to Thanksgiving, the county council will deliberate, will take community input, will propose amendments and make other changes, and ultimately adopt a budget in early to mid-November. And so we actually just did that last week. We adopted our 2021 budget, which I'll talk about on the next slide. So within our county budget, we pay for services for both unincorporated citizens or citizens who do not live in cities, but we also have services that are for folks who live in cities as well. And so just a couple of examples of those. For unincorporated citizens, we've got the sheriff's office or public safety, our county roads in between cities, and then county parks like Wenberg County Park or Kayak Point, and several others throughout the county. And then for citizens who live within cities, our county pays for, our court system, our superior courts and district courts, as well as our elections through our county auditor's office. And so those are just a few examples of what our county budget pays for. On the image here, you can see a breakdown of your property tax dollar. And so if you can see, I know it's in kind of small print, but for every dollar that you pay in property taxes, about 13 cents goes to county government. If you look here, the majority of it goes to schools, and then you've got portions that go to cities and towns, fire districts, libraries, hospitals, parks, and other small general purpose districts. But about 13 cents on the dollar goes to county government, and that's split with about $7 cents going to general fund and about 6 cents going to the roads fund. Within our county budget, we have about a quarter of our budget that pays for services in the general fund. And so we've got several funds within county government. We've got our general fund, our real estate excise tax fund, our chemical dependency mental health fund. But the main one, which gets most of the attention, is the general fund, because that pays for a lot of the services that was mentioned previously, whether it's public safety or parks or those sorts of things. The largest portion of our general fund budget is our law and justice system, and that's pretty typical for local governments. And that includes, our law enforcement, it includes our county jail, our prosecutor's office, our public defenders, and our district and superior court system. So if we can go to the next slide. So here are some highlights from our 2021 adopted budget. As I mentioned, we just adopted this last week, and it was a difficult budget, obviously, because of COVID. We actually had to open up our 2020 budget over the summer for a mid-year budget revision ordinance. And that's because when COVID hit and we had large sales tax revenue shortfall, we were about $28 million deficit that we were facing as a county in 2020. And so what we did as a council is we opened up our 2020 budget for a mid-year budget amendment several months ago to address that deficit of about $28 million. And the way we did that is we implemented a countywide hiring freeze. We did a week of furloughs for county staff, and we delayed or eliminated several capital projects. And so that helped us to address that $28 million revenue shortfall in 2020. We also used up funds from our revenue stabilization fund. And so if any of you can recall from a presentation I've given in the past here, when I first came on the council, we had a rainy day fund of just about $25,000. And over the last several years, we've built that up to about $4.5 million, which is the highest it's ever been in Snohomish County. And so now with COVID hitting, obviously it's raining pretty hard. And so we were able to use those funds to help offset some of the other, some of the deficit and some of the other things which are happening. And so that was very helpful to be able to utilize that. Again, that was for 2020, but last week we adopted our 2021 budget, so looking at our revenues and expenses for the upcoming year. Our focus during our budget process, and I think this is true for each year when we budget, but particularly for this upcoming year with the difficult financial situation that businesses and families and everyone else is facing, our focus has been to be as efficient as we can with your tax dollars and to stretch them as much as we can to get the most bang for the buck. And so we've really prioritized not raising the general property tax levy in Snohomish County. And I want to be clear, that doesn't mean that you won't see property tax increases, because there are several jurisdictions that have the ability to raise property taxes, whether it's state government, your county or cities, or your local districts like schools or fire or other sorts of districts. And so each of those have the opportunity to raise the general property tax levy. In Snohomish County, for the last 4 consecutive years, we have passed a balanced budget with no increase to the general property tax levy. And we feel that that's very important, especially during a time like this, because as I mentioned, businesses are having to tighten your belts, families are having to tighten belts. And so we really feel strongly that government needs to be responsive and do the same sort of thing. Some of the highlights of our budget include prioritizing public safety. We reduced discretionary spending, and we funded designated crisis responders, which I'll talk about a little bit later in the slideshow. One other thing I wanted to mention is we have a new online budget tool that we've been developing over the last several months. And so if any of you have ever been to a city council or a county council meeting, it can be very difficult to kind of sort out what's going on with the budget because it's really complex and, you know, it gets worked on over months. And so if you're just coming in one time, it's kind of difficult to figure out what's going on. So we developed this tool where anybody can go onto our county website, and that's linked on this slide here. And you can see what's in our budget, and you can compare it to last year's budget and see the changes. So you can look at both revenues and expenses and get a better idea of what your tax dollars are going to fund. And so I'd really encourage you, if you're interested, to go and check that out. And if you have any questions at all about it, please feel free to get in touch with me. We want to make sure that that tool is as user-friendly as possible, and so would really appreciate any feedback on that. Next slide, please. So COVID-19 in Snohomish County, I think this is the elephant in the room for the last year. I think we just passed the 1-year mark of COVID-19. And so obviously it's brought a lot of difficulty on. The first case, as many of you know, of COVID-19 in our country was in Snohomish County. And so we continue to face the fallout from both the public health and economic issues that have been caused by COVID. If you look at the data that's shown here from the Snohomish Health District, our case counts have doubled since the first wave that we saw in late March, early April, that you can see with the first peak there on the graph. If you look at the graphs that are shown here, you can kind of see 3 waves. There's that first wave in late March, early April. There's the second one in the July-August timeframe, and then there's where we are at right now in November. And it's interesting, if you look at the data, if you compare the hospitalizations and death counts, which are on the middle graph and the lower graph, you can see in the first wave that we had a large number of cases and also a very significant number of hospitalizations and deaths. With that second wave kind of in the summer area, you had a spike in cases, but not a corresponding significant spike in hospitalizations or deaths. And now where we're at in November, we've doubled from our first wave, so a huge increase in case counts. And we're not quite sure yet. I think it's too soon to tell what that'll mean for hospitalizations or deaths. I have had conversations with our health officer in Snohomish County, Dr. Chris Fitters, and his take on it, for anybody who's interested, is that we're seeing these increased case counts, but it may take 3 or 4 or more weeks for us to see an increase in hospitalizations or deaths, because his theory is that a lot of the counts we're seeing right now are among younger generations who often don't need to be hospitalized, and we haven't been seeing a significant number of death counts within that age demographic. But if it gets transferred to older populations, which are more susceptible to hospitalization and death, then we could see those counts rise on those lower graphs. And so we'll be sure to watch out for that. As many of you know, Governor Inslee issued some additional restrictions over the weekend, and those went into effect this week. As a county, we don't have any legal authority to reduce restrictions. Local governments can add restrictions, but not reduce. And so we haven't added any. We really are focused as a county, and I think all of our cities in the county would probably say the same thing. We're really focused on how can we most help our businesses and families during this time. We've got these restrictions which have been implemented from the state level. How can we help to mitigate the negative economic impact that might have? And so I'll touch a little bit on that on the next couple of slides. If we could go to the next slide, please. So the COVID-19 response, the federal government passed, many of you are likely familiar with the CARES Act. So Congress passed this piece of legislation, the president signed it into law, and that appropriated about $140 million of CARES Act funding to Snohomish County government, which we're tasked with appropriating that funding and distributing it to where the greatest need is in our community. And so what we did as a county council, in coordination with our county executive, and a lot of cities are taking similar action with their CARES Act funds, is we appropriated that funding into 4 buckets. The first was public health and emergency response. And so that's the health district, that's our quarantine center, and everything that goes into the public health response to COVID from Snohomish County government and the Snohomish Health District. That was about $50 million that was put into that bucket to cover those costs. The next is human services. So that covers things like rent relief, and that was about $30 million that went into that bucket. Then we have economic recovery and resiliency. So if any of you have applied for an R3 grant through the county, that was one example of the small business grants that were funded through that pot, and that was close to $50 million that was put into economic recovery and resiliency. And then finally was essential government services. And what that is it's basically we have certain services that have to continue in person, our front counters, our public safety. And so we have to make sure that we're purchasing PPE and other equipment to make sure that our first responders and others are safe. That was about $6 million that went into that bucket. As I mentioned, we had R3 grants that went out to small businesses. And so we put several $1 million worth of grants into that. Of course, the need is always greater than the funding available. So I think we had over 1,000 applications within the first 24 hours that came in. And so unfortunately, not able to fund all of them, but we're able to hopefully get some help and help some of those businesses who qualified for that funding. And then I know that cities and our state and federal government also had grants available with regard to small businesses. Next slide, please. So another step that we've taken, Executive Summers and I convened a task force to support our businesses and workers, and that's called the Economic and Workforce Recovery Task Force. And the goal or the purpose of this task force is to help steer dollars toward where the greatest needs are. And so some of the money that I mentioned last in the economic and resiliency bucket went toward this Economic and Workforce Recovery Task Force, and this task force had an opportunity to give insight as to where those funds should go to best help our businesses. We also formed a North County Economic Recovery Advisory Board, and I think there's a couple members here who are a part of that. But I felt it was really important in our part of the county to hear the perspectives from small businesses and organizations and others who are on the ground facing the day-to-day difficulties of COVID and the various restrictions which are in place, so that we can hear how, as a county government, we can be most responsive and best help to address those barriers which are being brought up. And so we convened that North County Economic Recovery Advisory Board. There was a report that was formed from one of those meetings from the suggestions and ideas that were given. And that report is available online at the link that's listed on this screen here. And so if you're interested, you can feel free to go and check that out. Obviously, we're over a year into COVID, but our businesses are still continuing to struggle. And as I mentioned, we had additional restrictions given from the state this last week. And so for your business, if there's anything that the county can do to help, then I'd really encourage you to reach out to myself or others at county government. And we'd love to be a partner and work in any way we can to help support you during this difficult time. Next slide, please. So transportation is another big one for Snohomish County government. And transportation is always an interesting one to talk about because the transportation costs for building new roads or new interchanges are very high, in the multi-million-dollar range, and they take a very long time to complete. And so when we look at various transportation projects, often it'll cost about $50 million if we want to do a new interchange, but it'll also take almost a decade to go and get the funding from the state and the federal level, get all the design done, and then get construction done. So transportation projects are extremely costly and they take a very long time, which is obviously frustrating for all of us who need to use the roads and want increased transportation opportunities to reduce our traffic congestion. So one of the things that's really important in getting these funded and securing funding for improved transportation projects is partnerships. At the local level, and I think this goes for both counties and cities, there's very little funding available to fund these major transportation projects. And I'll just give one example. In Snohomish County, our biggest need right now, I think, is the US 2 trestle. And when we've done estimates on that, it'll be over $1 billion for a trestle fix. And that's without adding any capacity. That's just replacing the westbound trestle. So $1 billion for one project, our entire county budget, which funds everything, is just about $1 billion. And so we can't fund that on our own. What we do when we go out for transportation improvements is we partner with our local cities. And then what we'll do is we'll go to the state legislature And so the cities will put some money in, the county will put some money in, so we have skin in the game. And then we'll ask the state legislature to help us fund some of these projects where there's a lot more funding available. And in some cases, like the US2 trestle, we'll go to our federal delegation, our senators and Congress people, and ask them to be a partner as well. And so that partnership is just so important in getting these projects funded. And I want to highlight some of the projects that are on the PowerPoint here, because these are a result of great partnership, which has resulted in North County having several important projects secured and funded, and some of these are already under construction. And I'll just give a disclaimer, this was all done before I came into office. So none of this is me, this is all the result of the great work from our cities and county leaders at the time. But I want to run through these real quick, just so we have an idea of what's coming over the next few years. So if you look, we have a new I-5 Highway 529 interchange. That's the green square at the bottom of the screen here. And that's just started to get under construction. That's about a $45 million project. And so if you're in Marysville with the new First Street bypass, you'll have an opportunity once that interchange is complete to get around the railroad tracks and onto I-5 without having to stop when there's a train, which will be a great opportunity for those of us who have had to deal with that. Next is the 156th Street interchange. So that's the middle green dot. So that'll be a brand new interchange. It's supposed to be built in 2025. That's about a $42 million project. If any of you have driven on I-5 northbound, before you get to the Smoky Point area, there's an overpass at 156th Street, but there's no interchange. And so what this project does is it builds a full interchange at that site, which will help ease traffic congestion in Smoky Point. We've also got interchange improvements at 88th Street and 116th Street. And so there are existing interchanges there. The 116th Street improvements, I think, are just about, they have been completed. And then 88th Street is scheduled for next year. Those are each about $40 million. The 88th one is, I think, $36 million. And then finally, Highway 531 expansion and improvements. And so that's another project of about $40 million in that Smoky Point area. And then the last thing I wanted to highlight regarding transportation was community transit is also a great partner. We've got Bus Rapid Transit coming to North County, which we don't currently have, but that'll be coming along State Avenue in Marysville and Smoky Point Boulevard into Arlington. And so Bus Rapid Transit will be a really great opportunity for those who work along that area or want to have access to fast transportation in that region. And so that should be coming over the next several years, and we're really excited about that. Next slide, please. So economic development. It's an interesting time to be talking about economic development because obviously there's a lot of negative news that we're hearing with COVID and a lot of the businesses which have been forced to go out of business as a result of the shutdown and not being able to make the sort of revenue that's needed to keep going. And also, the Boeing decision and the impact that that'll have on our aerospace sector throughout Snohomish County and throughout the region. But we do have several bright spots that I want to point out, I think, for our long-term future in Snohomish County that I'm really optimistic about regarding economic development. The first of those is commercial air service at Payne Field. And so I don't know how many of who are here have had the opportunity to fly out of Payne Field, but it's just a beautiful airport. It's won several awards, even national awards, and it's one of a kind in our country, actually, because it's a privately operated airport. So the county owns the land that the airport is on, and we lease that land to the tenant, which is Propeller Airports. And that business has come in and put $40 million of private investment through a private-public partnership to build that airport. And as I mentioned, it's just a beautiful facility with great service. I think from the time you park to the time you get into the terminal, it's just about 5 minutes. And so, and just completely different from I think the CPAC experience. And so that's a great opportunity, not just for convenience for those of us who live here in Snohomish County and want to, have a more accessible way to fly around our country, but also for businesses and economic development. I can't tell you how many businesses that we've spoken with as a county, whether they're in Silicon Valley or other areas of the country that we want to recruit here. And the number one issue they'll bring up is the traffic congestion between King County and Snohomish County. So having an airport right in our county and our county seat in Everett is a great opportunity for those companies to locate here where they can fly right in, do their work here, fly right out. And so we've already seen some business growth as a result of that, which is obviously great news. Another thing particular to North Snohomish County is our Cascade Industrial Center. So this is about 4,000 acres of manufacturing and industrial land in North Marysville and South Arlington. And both of those cities have done a great job of developing this. It has the potential for thousands of family wage jobs. I think we've already had several thousand jobs come in, and a lot of really cool sectors, from aerospace to the space sector, I know, and other really cool businesses that are coming in and locating in that center. And why I'm so excited about that Cascade Industrial Center is because if you think about North County and the large scheme of things in our Puget Sound region, we're relatively affordable. Obviously, housing costs are going up, and it's difficult to find housing. But if you compare North Snohomish County to, say, Seattle or even South Snohomish County, we're much more affordable, which is a good thing. We also have a lot of great recreational opportunities in North Snohomish County. We've got the ocean on the west and the Cascade Mountains on the east, a lot of great county and city parks. And so if you think about kind of the live, work, play slogan, we've got the live and we've got the play, but what we've really been missing is the work part. We've got several large employers in Snohomish County, but they tend to be in the southern part of Snohomish County. And about 50% of Snohomish County residents actually commute to outside of the county for work. And so what we've really been trying to work on as a county, and cities have been actively involved in this, is trying to build up our ability to foster family wage job growth in our county so that people can work close to where they live and have that convenience and not have to battle traffic down to Seattle to work. And so this Cascade Industrial Center is a critical part of that. And as I mentioned, has potential for thousands of family wage jobs, which we're really excited about. One final note on economic development is the Regional Apprenticeship Pathways Program, which we've been working on. The county and cities and school districts and labor and business have all been great partners on putting together a hands-on training program for our local youth so that they can enter into successful careers in the skilled trades. And I think that's so important. You know, we've got some great opportunities for our youth to go down the college route, which is the route I went toward and thought it was really valuable. But a lot of our kids have great opportunities in the trades and in alternative routes than the traditional four-year college route. And so this is a program which is currently facilitated at Marysville-Pilchuck High School, and it's open to students throughout Snohomish County. And it's been seeing some great success. It's a couple of years old now, and I think we've had students who have gone on to summer internships and gone on to work with various local businesses, which has been great to see. Next slide, please. So regional collaboration, I mentioned on the transportation slide how important partnerships are. And that goes for transportation, certainly, but it goes for a lot of other things as well. And so we've got a 5-county region here that you can see on the screen: Snohomish, Whatcom, Island, Skagit, and San Juan. And what we've done is we've brought representatives from these counties together for what's called a Swiss group for the first letter in each of the 5 counties. And what we've been doing is partnering on a number of issues. Right now, it's mainly been legislative advocacy with our state legislative session starting in the next couple of months, but also looking to partner on things which affect all of our counties, and which, if we put all of our heads together and all of our resources together, we can have a greater effect for the people we represent. And so that can be anything from transportation to behavioral health, to rural broadband access, to housing, all sorts of issues which we can hopefully collaborate on and be more efficient for those we represent. So really looking forward to the work of this group. It's a brand new group. We've only met a couple of times so far. But I think it's a great opportunity for that continued collaboration. Next slide, please. Public safety. So public safety, I think, is the primary responsibility of local government, and that goes whether you're a city or a county. I think public safety is our biggest responsibility. We've received some demands over the last year or so to defund the police in Snohomish County. I know many of you have probably seen this on the news in Seattle or other major cities. And we've gotten that in Snohomish County as well. We received a letter demanding that we defund the police and eliminate ties with municipal police departments. And I want to be clear, we're not going to do that. What I've really appreciated is reasonable people coming from both sides of the aisle to reject this idea. I think it's very important that we have criminal justice reforms, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. We have some good opportunities in Snohomish County to do that. But I really don't think it's a good idea to defund our police. I think it's important we continue to prioritize public safety. And I think, and we have examples of this in Snohomish County, I think there are great examples of how public safety and human or social services can work together to benefit our community. And I don't think that those two, public safety and human services are in any way mutually exclusive. I think if we can prioritize both of those, then we'll all be better off as a result of that. And so one example I'll give is on the next slide on the embedded social worker program, which many of you may be familiar with. But I do want to touch on criminal justice reforms because I think this is a big part of it. And as a result of a lot of the awful things which have been happening, whether it's the George Floyd death or other deaths which have happened around the country, has really highlighted and brought to the forefront the importance of criminal justice reforms. And so we've been talking about that at the county level. And I know cities and the state and all over the country, these conversations are being had. So what we've done is we have funded in our budget a countywide data collection effort to take a look at our entire criminal justice system from the time somebody is arrested by our sheriff's department to the time that charging decisions are made in our prosecutor's office to court cases in our superior court, to take a look at where disparities are in our criminal justice system so that we can look at that data and see, maybe there are areas where Snohomish County is doing a good job, and then there are other areas where we're maybe doing a poor job, and we need to really look at addressing that and making some changes to have a positive impact. The other thing we're doing is we funded body cameras for our sheriff deputies, and so we'll be starting that next year as a pilot. A lot of cities and counties have been going toward this, and we have full support from law enforcement doing that as well. I think each police officer I've spoken with has been all in favor of body cameras because in their view, it protects the community and it also protects them. And so that's something that we want to make sure to move forward with and is an important reform, I think. Next slide, please. The homelessness and the opioid epidemic. This has been a big issue. When I first came into office, this was the #1 thing I heard about, I think, was the homelessness and opioid epidemic in our county. And it's not just Snohomish County, obviously. We see it throughout the Puget Sound, and I think we see it all throughout our entire country in various communities. And so what we've done is try to take a unique approach in how we address this issue. And I mentioned earlier how there are opportunities, I think, where public safety and human services can work together to bring about positive results for the community. And I want to highlight one of those, which I've just been so proud of, and that's an effort called the North County Embedded Social Worker Program. And so the cities of Arlington and Marysville and our Sheriff's Office and our County Human Services Department have worked together to establish this program. And what it does is it partners up police officers with social workers, and they go out into homeless encampments or other areas where people are struggling with drug addiction or a mental health issue. And they'll work to get them into services, into detox, treatment, housing, job training. They have those services available that they will offer. But the flip side of it is they also have an enforcement mechanism where if there's somebody that's absolutely refusing services and they are committing crimes, whether it's breaking into cars or breaking into homes to steal and feed a drug addiction, then we're going to arrest those folks. And if they refuse to take on the treatment, then they're going to go to jail. And so I think it's that carrot and stick approach where you have the services, which is obviously the preferred route. It's better for the individual because they can get onto a healthier and more sustainable lifestyle. It's better for the community when we can get those people help and get them back on their feet. And it's also cheaper than having them in jail. But we do have that jail option as well, because what we don't want to become is what we've seen in some of the communities to the south, where they've become magnets for people to come in. And you've got, heroin injection sites coming in and rampant crime and homelessness. And so we really want to avoid that. We want to focus on the compassionate approach, which I think is really trying to make sure that these people can get the help that they need, whether it's detox or treatment or whatever it may be, and get them back on their feet. And so we have that clear choice there between treatment and jail if crimes are committed. And that's been really successful. If you look at the results so far, this is a fairly new program, but hundreds of people have been helped, have gotten into treatment just in North Snohomish County alone, which has been great to see. Another action that we took a couple of years ago is we banned heroin injection sites from Snohomish County. So this has been in the news recently because the city of Seattle just approved bringing these sites to Seattle. And I've had the chance to visit one of these sites in Vancouver, BC, had the chance to go up there with an Everett City Council member, and was really, really discouraged by what I saw. We parked about a mile away from the site, and just in our walk from where we parked to the site itself, we saw hundreds of people laying in the street with needles in their arms in front of businesses where families would have to go if they wanted to access the businesses. And it was just kind of a hopeless scene that you could see all throughout the community. It really damaged this entire area. And so we want to make sure that that doesn't happen in Snohomish County, obviously. We've got these great options for treatment. We've got our Carnegie Resource Center, our diversion center. We've put a lot of resources into detox and treatment opportunities for folks so that we can get them back on their feet. But what we don't want to tolerate is things like these injection sites where, you know, there's really no goal of getting them better. It's just, you know, we don't have any hope for you. We're gonna just leave you under the bridge to continue injecting heroin for the rest of your life. And I don't think that that's the compassionate approach. I think it's much more compassionate to get people into treatment, and then if they're not willing to do that, to really say, look, you've got to get help. You can't continue to commit crimes, or we're going to have to arrest you and prosecute those crimes. And then the last thing on this slide is our chronic nuisance ordinance. And so you can see in the photo here on the slide, we have a lot of nuisance properties in Snohomish County. And what that is basically when we have squatters or a lot of trash that gets piled up, and there are often drug crimes or sex crimes that are occurring on properties like this. And so what we've done is we've worked with our sheriff's office and our health district and our code enforcement to develop a chronic nuisance code, which gives them some teeth in enforcing the law on these properties so that we can help to get them cleaned up and turned around. And so we've been able to do that with several properties so far, which has been great. And we're going to be working in 2021 on an update to this code, so some fixes which can give our staff who are working on this some additional tools in getting these cleaned up. And next slide, I think that just about concludes the presentation. Really appreciate the opportunity to give an update on Snohomish County government this morning. Thank you all so much for joining in, and I'd be really happy to answer any questions if you have any. So thank you.
I have a question.
Yeah, Todd.
Thank you, Nate, so much. It's been a lot of information. Can we get a copy of that presentation at some point?
Yeah, absolutely. I can send it out, or I think Jessica has it too, whatever's easier. But yeah, we'll make sure that gets sent out.
Great. My question is regarding the Swiss group of those 5 counties. There's three questions I have about that. Who makes up this group? What's its specific purpose? And are there other collective county groups like this in Washington State?
Great question. So the first one, who makes up the group? It's the county governments of those 5 counties. So Snohomish, Skagit, San Juan, Island, and Whatcom. We've had conversations about, can we get cities or tribes or others involved, which I think would be great to do down the road. But like I mentioned, it's a brand new group. And so what we're trying to do is just get the structure formed. And so right now at the table are just those 5 counties. The second question, I think, was what's the purpose or the goal of the group? And right now, I think the main goal is legislative advocacy. So what we found as Snohomish County government is we'll go down to Olympia, meet with our legislators, and we can have, a pretty good impact because we've got 7 legislative districts in Snohomish County. But if you take those 5 counties together and we all can get around these joint priorities like rural broadband access and transportation priorities, and we can all go down as one big block together to Olympia, we have a much greater impact. You know, there's strength in numbers, so to speak. And so that's our main priority right now, is how can we come together around these priorities, which all of our communities have in common, and advocate at the state and federal level for those. But as I mentioned, I think there are other opportunities, whether it's working together on housing or behavioral health. I think those opportunities are there too for down the road. And I can't remember the third part. Can you remind me?
Are there other examples of a collective county group somewhere in the United States or in Washington currently?
Right. So we have a Washington State Association of Counties, which is all 39 counties. And there are collective city groups, like I think Sound Cities in King County is an association of cities. Snohomish County has the Snohomish County Cities. I don't know of another group of counties in Washington State other than the full 39 that are getting together. So this would be a first of its kind in Washington State. I'm sure there are examples elsewhere in the country, but not that come to mind. Great questions.
Thank you, Nate. So we've got a question in chat from Kathleen. Can you talk a minute about the integrity of our county election system? I was impressed by how quickly my ballot was scanned and accepted after dropping it off at the Marysville City Hall.
Yes, great question. And we've been getting a lot of questions about this, with the 2020 election, because we've been hearing all across the country of different perspectives on the integrity of elections. And what I'll say as an elected official in Snohomish County is I'm 100% confident in our elections in Snohomish County, and I would say in Washington State. I think our Secretary of State does a phenomenal job. Our county auditor does a great job. And I'd really encourage you, if you haven't had the chance, to go and take a tour of our elections department at the county. I know our auditor will personally give tours. And I actually talked with somebody just a couple of weeks ago who was very skeptical about our county election system and the integrity of it. They went and had a tour with our auditor, and they came out and said, you know, I've got no concerns now. I'm confident. I think it's very secure. And as was mentioned in the question, when you turn in your ballot, whether you mail it in or you turn it in a drop box, there's a website on the county website, and I think it links to the state website, where you can go on and you can see the status of your ballot. So you can see if there's a discrepancy with the signature, that'll show, and it'll show how you can address that. Or if your ballot's been accepted and counted, that'll show as well. And so I know I use that tool every time I turn in my ballot, because I want to make sure it gets accepted. And so I'd encourage all of you to do that as well if you're interested. But would definitely recommend that tour of the county elections. I think it's a great experience.
Thank you. If there's any other questions, you could do a hand raise. Okay, it doesn't look like we have any others. So thank you, Nate. I appreciate your time so much and your expertise and all the information you had to share. Also, thank you to Realty One Orca for being our sponsor today. I'll get out to the digital business card swap to your email, and I'll include the today's PowerPoint presentation for your guys' information. He's got some great links in there. And then just a reminder, there's no December BBH, just like every other year. So we will see you in January for the State of the City address and the State of the City and Chamber address. So thank you guys all and have a great day.